viewers, welcome back to another podcast of the 16th Council, this time also the Geoeconomic Strategy Unit, which is something we will be introducing as our new initiative. This is very exciting, Adip.
Yes, it is, Ishan. And it was great how so many conversations of ours went on us discussing world affairs, discussing how the world is moving, how each specific events in our more and more volatile world is affecting not just one country, but the world as a whole. And so to formalize this and for it to go beyond just our conversations whenever we meet and bring it to a platform where we can take it to the world, take it to stakeholders for whom this information is actually useful, or just two people talking over lunch.
Exactly, or breakfast, or brunch, or tea, coffee, whatever that we usually have. But I think one important thing that you pointed out over here is volatility. The one thing that I tell people these days is that there's only one thing you can be certain about, and that is that there will be uncertainty. And if you look at the way in which all these global developments are taking shape, they're no longer isolated incidents. One thing in one region is bound to impact something in another region. If you look at what's happening now with the situation in Europe, with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we saw how the global energy crisis literally transformed the way the European Union does energy, and so on and so forth in other regions as well.
Yes, and the world is more interconnected than it ever was before. And that comes with its own negatives. As much as we like to look at the positives of globalization and how it has been greatly impacting and helping us grow our economies, we play off of our strengths. But that also means that now we are also tied in our weaknesses.
Absolutely. And I think one more important thing over here is that there is still opportunity. Oftentimes people look at it as risk mitigation on a very defensive scale, something that you're always reactive towards. I think that if you do risk mitigation properly, you should essentially be able to engage with opportunities that others cannot. And that puts you on the front foot. You play on the front foot. You take advantage of all the good things that globalization, as you said, has to offer, while mitigating some of the risks that are bound to induce certain vulnerabilities in business models in how you do trade from a country level.
Of course. And I think one of the benefits of risk mitigation and staying on the front foot is that you see that the market is evolving quite a bit on the global sense. Countries which were growing at a very rapid rate all these years, they're starting to get saturated. And it's time for us to be able to identify newer economies which are now taking positions that the older growing states like the United States had taken. And when you enter such markets, of course, you have the hesitation that comes with it because of the risks which exist. So the question is, how do you identify these, balance whatever potential risks are there, and use that to take the first step?
This is exactly why we started the Geoeconomic Strategy Unit. Think of it as a geopolitical/geoeconomic research project between students at the 16th Council that is looking to have a lot more practical engagement on the ground with granular details, such as entering new markets, engaging with stakeholders such as businesses that are looking to expand into new frontiers, rather than just sit in conference rooms and have these conversations in closed-door meetings.
Yes, that makes sense. Now, one word that you had used the last time we spoke was barometer. Could you elaborate on how it ties in to this entire situation that we're in, to whatever we're doing going forward?
The barometer is one of the primary tools that the GSU would like to use in order to communicate the strategies that we would like to put on the table. Now, if you talk about any new business that wants to expand into markets that are seen as frontier markets, be it in Africa, Latin America, places that are considered to be higher risk in traditional financial systems, but have a lot to offer. And we know that they have a lot to offer because we understand the potentials within those populations, within those markets, within those companies, etc. The barometer is an overview of all of these emerging markets compiled into one digestible report to look at the opportunities that exist in these new regions that people perhaps may not really be aware of immediately. At the same time, it seeks to tell people and highlight some of the underlying risks associated with doing business in these markets so that you can gauge, and that's what a barometer does. It helps you gauge the extent to which you would like to engage with these markets.
I think it's a lovely metaphor for how the actual weather barometer takes in all the concepts and all the measurements of humidity, temperature, wind speed, and puts it into a simple weather report on whether it'll rain or not, or how hot or cold it'll be. It's a great metaphor for what we'll be doing.
It is. But then we also have to nuance it a little bit, Adip, because you have to remember that we are dealing with very complex issues. It is not black and white. It depends on the risk appetite of individual stakeholders that we're talking to. It depends on the particular strategy that they're trying to employ when entering these new markets, or even looking at their current state of business. If you look at supply chains, if you look at value chains, the amount of disruption that we have faced in these sectors, it's absolutely unbelievable. I mean, volatility is through the roof. Nobody has ever seen anything like it in terms of the disruptions that are happening on the logistics front, on the procurement front, and also now in terms of executing into these new markets that we're talking about, because governments are changing quickly, government policies are changing quickly. And since every issue is receiving the amount of attention because of media cycles that they previously have not, governments tend to act quicker, and when they act quicker, they tend to look at these issues in election cycles. So they're myopic. You look at it in 5-year, 10-year cycles. Now, if you're planning an entrance strategy as a business, probably not a very robust business, this is a huge risk for you, because you do not want to bet too much on that. You do not want to put all of your eggs in one basket. And the risk barometer is only a starting point for these nuanced conversations, because you can understand the amount of intricacies that we will be dealing with when we are having these conversations. So of course, the idea is to engage with these people more deeply, understand what their priorities are, and help them strategize accordingly.
Of course. And I think another point that we have to consider is how fast moving all these industries are, and how fast moving the political situations and world affairs is. Yeah. It's moving very rapidly. It's becoming more and more unpredictable by the day. So it becomes a question of how we tackle this.
It does. And that's one more thing. In terms of stakeholder engagement, when you're talking to people, you cannot talk to them in silos anymore. Actions by one stakeholder group is bound to impact other stakeholders. So when you're talking about a business, you have to talk to the government as well. You need to talk to the local populations. You need to talk to the employees of that business, and you need to talk to the clients. All these different stakeholders interact in the complex environment that you've just outlined for us. And that's something that the risk barometer in itself cannot really address. It is definitely a starting point. It's an overview. It's a snapshot. But what we need to do is move beyond these surface level talks. And that's one thing that I really do want to do with the GSU, and it was part of my vision when starting it. It is essentially talking in real world terms, because when you look at all these big consultancies that people are employing, or even international organizations such as the UN, the World Bank, etc., they're not really telling people how to do things that they are recommending them to do. They tell you the what you should be doing, but they do not tell you the how. And that's something that was highlighted to me when I was talking to a government from Central Asia. The frustration that was expressed was, of course, these economic policies that we are getting recommendations of, they sound all good on paper, but then look at our context, look at the position that we find ourselves in, look at our realities. Are they really matching what we should be doing and what we can be doing in terms of our capabilities at this point in time? So these nuances is what the GSU would like to address on a much more granular level, as I said.
So how do you suggest we proceed?
The starting point for us is essentially just to look at what are the immediate steps that we can recommend people to take. It needs to be actionable, Adip. If you're talking in abstract terms that are not real world, that are just too broad for people to understand, then it's just conference room conversation.
Yes.
As we said, we tend to move beyond those conference room conversations. And for me, it's about engaging with people in the real world, people who are working on the ground, talking to them, understanding their priorities, figuring out what works for them, what does not work for them, and then strategizing accordingly.
All right, that makes sense. Now, another aspect that you wanted to focus on is on the quantitative element of this, and how you go beyond just when you're giving advice. You have to base it off of concrete numbers, because that is what the world runs on nowadays. Your opinions are, of course, they're intuitive in nature for you since this is your area of expertise.
Yeah.
But there requires some backing that you can present to stakeholders. How are we planning to approach that? Because I remember there being some sort of new technological elements that we were planning to use.
100%, and that's where we push the envelope, because it's not just the qualitative elements that our analysts as a team, we come up with. It's about, as you said, cohesively gelling in the quantitative elements with the qualitative elements. Because even if you talk in terms of numbers, Adip, these days, you put in a report, you put in certain graphs and charts in that report. What does it mean? As long as it is not really serving the context of the stakeholders that we're engaging with, it's still abstract numbers. So what we need to do is effectively and cohesively gel in the quantitative elements and the qualitative arguments that inform each other and work together in order to strategize effectively in today's world. And when you talk about emerging technologies, we are always looking to place ourselves on the cutting edge of technology. And one thing that you cannot really move beyond in terms of conversations on this front is artificial intelligence in today's world. That's where you come in as well as our chief technology officer, I must say. Talk about what new elements in terms of large language models that can inform our analyses and just help us become more effective. I mean, it's not like you can ask it and you can delegate all of your tasks to AI. It's not at that level yet.
Yeah.
And even if it was, I think the human judgment element of it is the critical part. But one thing is for sure, effectively integrating emerging technologies, AI in particular, can definitely make us as a team more effective and help us deliver better results.
Of course. And I think when you had initially pitched the idea of integrating AI somehow, the first two keywords that came to my mind were scalability and frequency. Because these are two aspects where not just AI, but computers as a whole helped us grow and become more advanced. Scalability in what sense? Whatever analysis that is being done by our team of experts, at the end of the day, it takes way too long for them to, do, let's say, for an entire region or for a specific country. To scale that to all countries on a micro granular level, because that is what will create real impact, is time taking. If you are able to teach an AI model to do the same calculations, to do the same statistics, which evolves with time, which evolves with the conditions, that way we are not having some sort of general model per se, make random decisions saying, hey, this makes sense according to me. It's more of it learning from the human expertise and being able to replicate that and scale that to a much larger level. Scale that to all 190 countries that we'll be working with. Help us analyze those. And the second is frequency. As we spoke, the world is very volatile and unpredictable, and it changes at a very rapid pace. So to be able to have some sort of large language model that can read through the news every single day and make minor tweaks, minor updates based on the news cycle on a daily basis. And if some big event happens, there's some big announcement. In that case, trigger the panel of experts saying, hey, this has happened. We recommend that the risk-adjusted opportunity be tweaked from this number to this number. Now, we spoke a lot in our conversations about the term RAO, risk-adjusted opportunity. Could you elaborate on what it is?
The risk-adjusted opportunity score is essentially an overview that the GSU provides in terms of quantitative elements of our package. And what it seeks to do is capture the risks and opportunities effectively in terms of market entry. Now, if you're a business that is looking to expand into a new region, of course, you will have to look at granular details, look at the politics of the place, look at the geopolitical relations that specific country has with its neighbors and the countries beyond. But what the RAO seeks to do is adjust the opportunity that the market presents with the risks that it has. That means you can gauge very quickly what the ability to expand into that particular market is. If you think that the risks are too high, the RAO score will essentially help you capture that. If you think that the risks are low, the opportunities are high, you have good ROIs coming in, then the risk score helps you capture that reality as well.
Great. And so we plan on updating the RAO frequently, of course, based on the mathematics of what are the parameters that we're focusing on, that we scrape from the IMF's data.
Yeah, all the databases that exist,
Yes.
Yeah.
and then you incorporate that into the qualitative element
Yeah.
and use that as a basis to understand where we're getting the risk and opportunity from,
Yeah.
how they interact with each other, and how that helps individual companies gauge whether or not they should invest and to what extent they should invest in potentially emerging economies.
That is precisely the business model, and the way you've elaborated it. I mean, look at the inputs that an analyst can give, and we have a team of extremely talented analysts. They've all studied from the top universities on the planet. And one thing that I think they can really do, and all of us as a team can do, is unpack all of these individual elements that are coming up in terms of the RAO score, the other quantitative elements, the qualitative elements that we find ourselves, and cohesively merge them all together into strategic advice, into research, into outputs that can deliver actionable results rather than just being these boardroom talks that we talked about or reports that think tanks and all of these institutions are producing on a regular basis that are well researched, they're well put together. But honestly, it's all about actionable insight, and people don't have time these days, are they? People do not have time. We're moving at rates and speeds that the world has never seen before. And strategic advice, consulting firms, all of these institutions that are supporting businesses operating in this volatile environment need to move with that same speed and even faster.
Yes, and I think there is definitely benefit in playing to our own skill set and having economics and geopolitics experts analyze this information.
And tech experts in case of this fellow. I mean, talk to us, Adip, about how exactly we're integrating this LLM situation over here. I know we spoke about the quantitative elements and the way AI would inform those decisions that we're making. But honestly, how is AI helping us supercharge growth in today's world?
I think what is most important here is that it can allow us to tailor to the client's requirements. So if we have a company which is working in the steel industry and wants to expand their operations into a different country, over a very general RAO, we can retailer the calculations to the steel industry. We can pick up whatever indicators would be relevant to the steel economy in said country. We can read news from it, and we can use all of that to update the score very rapidly. That way, clients do not have to wait, let's say, 1 month for us to be able to analyze. We provide this information to our analysts very rapidly. AI is able to pick all of that up. AI is able to understand what is relevant in this context and then leave the expertise to the experts.
Yeah.
While in the meantime, also create a bespoke RAO specific to that industry, specific to that domain, to that technology, whatever it might be, whatever fits the client requirements best.
That makes sense. And I think people talk about this when it comes to AI. It's all about tailoring to client needs. It's also about personalization, hyper-personalization. Yes. That has definitely become a key term when people speak about deploying AI in settings such as ours. So that's definitely something we will be employing strategically in our case as well.
Yes.
So I think this has been a very insightful conversation into what the GSU is attempting to do, helping stakeholders achieve their own visions with ours.
Yes. Looking forward to this, Ishan. Looking forward to working with you and to actually be able to do genuine good to companies and bring our expertise onto the real world.
Absolutely. And we look forward to continuing all of the amazing things that we have planned. We have lined up developments going into the new year, into the second quarter and third quarter of 2026. And stay tuned for all of that. Thank you.